On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're previewing tomorrow night's game against the Edmonton Oilers, as well as talking some lines, all that and more. But first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I just want to thank all of you for making us your first listen of the day. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for making us your first watch of the day. On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're previewing tomorrow night's game against the Edmonton Oilers as Connor McDavid and Co. come to town for their first meeting of the year against Tampa. We also talk about the line combination. Should Jon Cooper move things around? We talk about that, and that's where we'll start. So Jon Cooper, jumping right into it, Jon Cooper has had to make some interesting decisions, put some guys in situations that they haven't been before early on in the season due to injuries and guys missing the start of the season. And speaking of line combos, it looks like, and to start off the base and start off the bat, the two players obviously that have missed the first couple weeks of the season have been Anthony Cirelli and Zach Bogosian, opening up the door for players such as Cole Kiepke and Nick Perbix. And we'll start there. So looking at that right now, as of the recording of this podcast, it was reported by Chris Kren that it looks like Zach Bogosian will be a game time decision for tomorrow night's game. And if he doesn't play, he doesn't play. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with not rushing him back solely based off the fact that Bogosian isn't exactly a spring chicken anymore. And I would not be worried if you have other players slide in to his position in the beginning of the season. If you have Hayden Fleury play in there a little bit more, or if you have, Hayden Fleury. I think Hayden Fleury would be the option there. Just because the Lightning getting by with Hayden Fleury and Nick Perbix and their defensive core throughout the first couple of weeks of the season, it's been good. It hasn't been great. Obviously, the Lightning are still working on some things, but it's resulted in 15 points through 12 games and them being tied for the fourth spot in the Atlantic Division, which, like I said, whether it was in the last episode or the episode prior, I think that all things considered, I think Tampa are in a good spot to start the season. I came into the season discussing how, maybe the expectations were a little bit higher than what Tampa was capable of going into the season. Obviously, everybody, after going to the Stanley Cup final, you always kind of expect your team to go right back there, barring some catastrophic shift in personnel. And for the most part, Tampa has had the same group of guys on the team heading into this year, give or take a couple of players minused out. But for the most part, I think that what we're looking at with this team and what Jon Cooper has done with the lines, I think he's made the moves that are available to him. I think the players, what you're getting from them now is really what was expected. Kucherov is hot, 6 goals in 6 consecutive games. Stamkos gets off to a great start as well this year. Braden Point looks like he's starting to pick things up. Nick Paul has scored a goal the other night. I'm not expecting him to go crazy like we saw last season, but I think 85 points out of him would be a pretty solid year for him. Alex Killorn, kind of just moving silent, just doing little things, not lighting up the stat sheet in terms of goals. I think we all kind of can agree that that's what we kind of figured from Killorn. I don't really think it'll help his trade stock because I really firmly believe that after this year, Killorn is gone. Obviously this is his last year of his contract, and I don't think Tampa is going to be too keen on re-signing him to a high level deal. Definitely not $4.5 million AAV. But looking at the rest of this team, Nemestikov, I think he's still trying to settle in. We see him doing some really good things off the puck, creating room for himself and space on the ice, which really you could all you could ask for out of this team and out of him. Ross Colton, another player who we kind of saw the same start to him a little bit last year, and then he really started to pick things up as the season progressed. Ross Colton, I think, is one of those players that I think we could agree on right now is probably going to be a slow starter. We could also probably agree that he does not really he probably gets in his head early on in the season, tries to do too much, and that's what really ultimately is his downfall. But for the most part, for this team, I think I think the game plan for Cooper and Co is that really just hold down the fort until you get Cirelli back. I think once you get Cirelli back, I think really you're going to start to see this team to become more dimensional. I think the face-off percentage is definitely going to be good, or a lot better, actually. And as I'm talking about it right now, Tampa, surprisingly enough, because there are some nights where they're just absolutely abysmal. They are seventh in the lead, seventh in the league in face-off win percentage. And that is, well, actually, let's look it up. I think they're seventh worst, actually. Let's look it up. Yeah, they are seventh worst in the league. So bottom of the league, actually, with 46% in the face-off circle. So definitely not good. So that puts them at, I don't know why the list is so strange on NHL.com. So actually, no, excuse me. That is why I don't know why the NHL does things like this. It doesn't make any sense. So they are 26th overall in the league in face-off percentage, which obviously is not good. But you look at the other teams at the bottom of that list, Colorado, who's a pretty decent face-off percentage team, and then it kind of drops off after that is with the high level of team. So you know what? Maybe once Cirelli gets back, we'll see an uptick in face-off percentage. I would imagine that he's probably going to be out there for a bulk of them going forward. I would like to see Stamkos, which he has been here and there in the face-off circle, taking some face-offs because I just feel like things need to be changed up there, and so really Cooper needs to get a little bit creative with his lines and way he shifts players around. And speaking about that, looking at the third and fourth lines now, I would expect that once Cirelli comes back, he'll be on that second line, which will probably drop Paul to the third line, and Kiepke will probably be slid out of the rotation with that. As for the third and fourth, really what I would like to see down the road, I spoke about how Ross Colton, he does get off to slow starts, but I would like to see him eventually get slid up to that second line spot, just because I feel like he's better than this. He's better than a third line player. And we've seen that, especially last year. So once you see him get slid up to that second line, it's probably a best bet that he's probably producing out there and really starting to get things going. But on the other side of that, I would also like to see Corey Perry get moved up to the third line, and then maybe Nemestikov gets moved down to that fourth, so you even it out, so you kind of have a guy on every line that could have the ability to go out there and score. So, I don't think, and let me know below in the comments. I mean, I think that Nemestikov on the fourth with Bellemare and Maroon, I think, he's not as physical as those guys, but if you move him on the winger, you allow him to kind of get some more ice out there with these big guys, and you add a little bit of smoothness to that sandpaper that is the fourth line. I think that'll benefit everybody, especially Perry, because, we saw it last year. Perry was on the third line at one point, and it really helped him offensively, not having to just overly focus on going out there and playing physical. So, maybe something that John Cooper will think about and play around with as Cirelli comes back and really opens things up for this lineup and opens up the door for creativity with players and personnel. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. And coming up next, we'll be talking about the upcoming game tomorrow night against one of the best players in the world, in Connor McDavid, alongside, of course, his team, the Edmonton Oilers, who are actually playing tonight against the Washington Capitals. We talk about that in just a bit, but first I want to talk about this episode's sponsor, and that is SimpliSafe. Now, if you've thought about securing your home with home security, but have been putting it off, you'll just want to listen up right now. Locked On Lightning listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year. You won't want to miss it. And here's why I love it, because you have 24/7 help. Whenever the alarm goes off, you get a call from them, and they'll let you know whether or not it's a legit emergency, whether you are home or not. In emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you could get priority police response. With the top-rated SimpliSafe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere, arm or disarm, and lock for a guest and access your cameras or adjust system settings. Don't forget, don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. That's 50% off any new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/LockedOnNHL. This is the biggest discount of the year, so don't forget. Don't wait around any longer. This would be with the holidays coming up. This would be the best Christmas gift to get your loved one. So that is simplisafe.com/LockedOnNHL, because there is no safe like SimpliSafe. So moving on, looking at a matchup that I spoke about a month ago when the Lightning were looking very sluggish. Well, not a month ago. I would say a couple of weeks ago. This is a matchup that over the last couple of years, I just, you always like to see how your team stacks up against the rest of the NHL, and especially the top teams and top players in the league. And so it's always kind of nice when you have a team with one of the top 5 players in the league coming to town, or you going there. And that's, in this matchup and I've spoken about it before, but, whenever a top 5 player comes to town, you kind of get to see what things are all about. And what I'm talking about is the matchup of Connor McDavid and Co. And really, I don't know how to feel about this. I don't know whether or not to be excited or worried for this Lightning team, just because it's just one of those things where it could go very well, and you could, your team could play an impressive game and really show that they could rise to the occasion against, a superstar, one of the all-time greats, or on the other side of that, it could go immensely bad. And the game I was thinking about from last year was last year's matchup at home right after we had that break. It was supposed to be the Olympic break, and obviously everything going on, and the players not really wanting to go overseas with COVID still being very much real, and all the guidelines that were going on with the Olympics. They elected to have the junior players go, but this game was just probably, if you look back on last season and you're just looking at the regular season as a whole, I think that this was probably one of the more stressful games. At that point, the Lightning were 33-11-6, and this was a game that was supposed to kick off the second part of the NHL season, and it did not disappoint. The Lightning did take this one 5-3 at home. Goals from Connor McDavid, Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, and Nikita Kucherov on an empty netter. So you got to see goals from everybody in this. And Connor McDavid did score twice in this game. And my worry, as I spoke about in the last episode, that, Tampa could very well, coming off a win such as what they had against Buffalo the other night, that we could have a little bit of a hangover. It's no secret this year and in years past that when Tampa has a good a feel-good win such as this against a team like the Sabres or just in general, and they have a couple of days off, they come back and you're just kind of starting from square one, and it's very worrisome with the amount of talent that the two players on Edmonton have, and Draisaitl and McDavid. One can't help but worry about what could potentially happen because let's face it, when Tampa plays well, they play well. They look like one of the top 5 teams in the league. And when they completely lay an egg, it's you really just want to cover your eyes. So looking at this Edmonton team, you got McDavid and Draisaitl already, but then you have a little bit of cluster of players where you can kind of see as to why this team has not been really successful over the last couple of years. But I'm just going to throw out some names that Lightning fans should at least keep an eye out for. Obviously, you have that top line of Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, and Puljujarvi. And then you got Kane, Draisaitl, and Hyman. And then, we've spoken about on this show how the Lightning are very top-heavy. Well, this is, in my opinion, one of probably the biggest top-heavy teams, most lopsided teams in terms of the second line and third line and fourth. And you got Fogle, McLeod, and Ryan, Shore, Holloway, and Yamamoto. And on paper, just by the forwards, once you get those two lines off the ice for Edmonton, I think Tampa should go out there, and that's where really they need to show their merit on the third and fourth lines. I think that this game, and just looking at that list of players on the third and fourth, and this is all projected, we might see some sort of change throughout the game as well and prior to the game. But, ideally, looking at the third and fourth line for Edmonton compared to Tampa, I mean, how can one make the argument that Tampa does not have an advantage? And really what, this all goes back to the talk over the last couple of years and why Tampa has been so successful is that, your bottom 6 is what's going to win games for you down the line. And really, in this game, I think it's very imperative that we see production from the third and fourth lines for Tampa Bay. So really, I would expect that maybe Cooper will try to get his guys going, his third line going pretty early on, as well as maybe moving Corey Perry up there with Kiepke, switching him out onto the third line so he could kind of get some more really pure offensive time with Nemestikov and Colton, because really what it comes down to it is that that Belmar Maroon line alongside Perry is really out there to kind of just lay down the law, really just do the gritty things. And I would expect that, like I said before, I feel like sometimes that kind of wears down a vet such as Perry, and really, he proves he could still score. So really, I would expect that, especially with Kiepke, who he's played decent. He's done a good job out there. He's been a good, very supporting cast member. But we need, when you're playing on the third line like that, I don't care whether it's your first season or your 15th, you need to produce. And, he's had some chances here and there, but he hasn't been really what Tampa has needed from him on that third line winger position. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially in a game like this where there's going to be so many eyes on it. I would expect that we'll see some more ice time on the third line for Corey Perry. Now, looking at the defensive core, again, you have really a lot of drop off. You have Darnell Nurse and Cody Ceci on the first line. And that's really much it. I mean, the other notable name on the third line pairing is Tyson Barrie, but I mean, he's on the third line pairing for a reason. Now, obviously, I have not watched the whole ton of Edmonton this year. I am watching them tonight. Like I said in the beginning of the show, they're playing they just got things started there. They're playing the Capitals up in Washington. And that's the other thing. You'll be able to get, an Edmonton team on the back end of a back-to-back. So, that'll be working in Tampa's favor there. But the thing that will concern me, and I think other than your bottom 6 really coming up big for you in a game such as this, against a team such as this, I think the thing that's going to be most important for Tampa, and the thing that we've really spoken about a lot on this podcast, against teams like this that do have that drop off in personnel as you're going down the lines, and that's really that goes back to discipline, not taking dumb penalties. Not because if you look at this power play, that's for Edmonton, that's where obviously that's their bread and butter. You got Kane, Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, and Draisaitl on the first power play unit with Tyson Barrie. And then the second is McLeod, Hyman, Pujarvi, Bouchard, and Nurse. So, really, I would expect that Edmonton's going to go out there, really try to do their best to draw as many penalties as possible, especially out of any of those guys on the fourth line. Especially a guy like Maroon, who we all know he's an agitator at this point in his career, which is great. And so, you would expect to see maybe some roughhousing on those lines. So really, it's going to be very, very, very important that, you limit the offensive chances for Edmonton in this game, especially on the power play, because, it's one thing to have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaital on the ice together on 5-on-5, but to have them with a guy down, it's going to make life for the Lightning defense. It's going to make life for the Lightning D-core as well as Vasilevsky very difficult. And, Vasilevsky's going to have his hands full anyway, trying to stop those two guys. So really, it's going to be a group effort tomorrow night, though. I really think that you're going to need to see production from all four lines, as well as, really the three lines really going together out there on the D-core and really having to go out there and play a disciplined game. And so, I really hope they go out there and really try to do their best imitation of what happened in the Buffalo game, because like I said on the previous episode when we were recapping that, I thought that was one of the best games this team has played all year. And I truly believe if Tampa could go out there and replicate that, especially against a team like Edmonton, I think that, Tampa will be setting themselves up for a win tomorrow night at home. So wrapping things up, I think that, everything I said, there's really not much more to say about it. Keep McDavid in check, keep Draisaitl in check, limit the penalties. And because also this goaltending situation, you got Skinner and Campbell, you got Skinner tonight. Campbell's probably going to be playing tomorrow night, and Lightning fans should be very familiar with Jack Campbell. He was the goaltender in Toronto over the last couple of years. As of now, he's 5-3-0 with a goals against average of 4.20 and a save percentage of 874. You got to jump on him early. Even if it's Skinner, which he looks like statistically he's the better goaltender, I still think regardless of who it is in net, you got to jump on this goaltender early. You can't let Edmonton get into a flow of things. You can't let them dictate. And that's what Tampa did very well. Buffalo is a good team. They are starting to kind of maybe cool off just a little bit now at this point in the season. But nevertheless, regardless of who it is, you always got to go out there and take control of the game. You always got to grab the bull by the horns, because regardless of who it is you're skating against out there on the ice, really what it comes down to is that if you allow them to go out there and set the scene and really get things moving for them and really get a lot of momentum going for themselves, you're going to be in for a long night, especially if you're going to be out there taking bad penalties, playing on your heels and turning over the puck. But it seems as though, like I said, things are starting to turn up for the Lightning over the last couple of games. I thought the first week of the season, first week of the month of November, you had going 2-3. I think that's a good start. I think, really when you look at those first 3 games of the month, you had a bad win, a good loss, and a very good win. So, that overall, I'm just as happy with these results and the quality of play that was in those games. I look at this as if the Lightning are 3-0, in my opinion. So, hopefully they, like I said, they could duplicate the performance that they had Saturday night against the Buffalo Sabres and take that out against Edmonton. And be sure, as you're watching that game, tweet to me, tweet to the show. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want us to talk about here on the show, and go ahead and follow us on our social media pages as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, the information is down below on the ticker. And if you're listening to us on audio platform, we're available wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form: Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, We're also available on YouTube, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up there and comment below as well. But we are available on Twitter at LO_Lightning, as well as LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram. You could find me, tweet to me, DM me if you want for just general questions about the Lightning or just mailbags for the show at DankyDank, DENKY, D8NK. I love hearing from all of you. And like always, we'll be back tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure when we'll record the pod. Most likely we'll record it post game. So, keep an eye out for that. I always like to do post game episodes just to kind of, have that raw feeling of what we just saw. And then eventually on the next episode, we'll dissect it just a little bit further. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Denker. I'll talk to you in the next one.